Welcome to the stage, Erin Heinmiller, Executive Director of Global Infrastructure Services at Pratt & Whitney, part of Raytheon Technology.
All right, good evening, guys. So before I start, I should just say thank you first because I'll forget otherwise. I just want to say thanks for having me here, and I'm excited to be here on behalf of Pratt & Whitney and Raytheon Technologies, and we're really excited to be a sponsor of this event. So I have two tips if you're ever going to give a speech is do not lose your voice, and then if you do, don't sit at a social and talk to about 100 people the day before because that definitely does not help. And then the other thing is if you have a choice on time, don't choose Friday night on St. Patrick's Day so I promise they have extra time in here and I'm like, I am definitely not going to use that time. And they said, if you get out early, I'm like, I'm sure everyone will be happy to be out here early on a Friday night. So I'm going to talk a little bit about risk and I'm going to use this water as much as I can. So I'll try to refill. I'm going to talk about risk. That's where I really spent the most of my career was in compliance and risk management. And, I was great at it, right? It's a key skill for cyber. And I had a lot of data. I would look at, the outcomes that would happen, the likelihood, and it was great, right? It was definitely a passion of mine, and it's what makes us great at cyber. But what I'm really going to talk about is my career and what it takes and what risk in your career looks like, and it's completely different. There's no data. If the data you have, you're probably talking yourself out of every risk. So I'm going to tell a little bit about my story. And, I'm happy to be here. Like for me, I am not a risk taker. I was telling somebody this earlier today. I love a good to-do list. So that's how I live my whole life. I love a schedule. So anytime that veers from that, my kids and my husband would tell you that I'm very inflexible. So risk has been hard for me. And so it's been something that I've had to manage throughout my whole career. And so you can't look at every negative consequence. You can't look at what's going to go wrong in every career choice. And but one thing I will say is I've been at Pratt & Whitney and Raytheon for almost 20 years. And I have loved every day that I worked. Well, most days. Every day is not perfect. I can't lie. But I get to work with some great people, and I've got to take some really good opportunities. And so the one piece I would say just to the risk taking is you don't have to take unnecessary risk. So risk doesn't mean you have to pick up and move across the country every time, and make a big career change. Sometimes for me, what I'm going to talk about is just a small risk that I took and everything that I did to just challenge myself. And every speaker, this is the other problem with speaking later in the day, is I heard all the keynotes and every point was totally what I would say, right? Get out of your comfort zone, try new things, and that's really what I'm going to talk about. And I was at this conference about 4 years, or in Pittsburgh, so I said 3 years ago, but it was actually 4. And there was a lot of people that were just in college, still coming into their first role. So I kind of reflected, and I'm really going to talk about the early career because I would say that the last 10 years have been a little bit boring, or they're not as, I didn't change as much in those last 10 years. So my first role, I was in cybersecurity, and I remember walking in the door, and it's a large corporation. I was at Pratt & Whitney. I've moved around a little bit, but I came back to Pratt & Whitney. But I literally thought people were speaking a different language. So if anyone has started at a large corporation, it was constant acronyms and I had no idea what they were talking about. And I thought to myself, I don't know what college did for me. I am completely not ready for this role. And, but I think there's a lot of people that feel like that, and it's just, you have to push through. And I think it's, especially in a large corporation, it's even more challenging to, come into a field and come into at the time it was a new group, but you figure it out. And one of my bits of advice for anyone who's early in career, and I'm probably going to waste any point that I would have to sum this up later on, but is just listen and give yourself time. Find those people that you know that you can rely on, ask questions, and eventually it gets easier. And one other bit of advice is, just figuring out the things I did well. So even though I didn't know everything or really anything at the time when I came into the role, I figured out what I did do well, and I kept doing those things well, and that helped me to kind of bridge every, the gap in between. So, all right, it's water time. Maybe I'll be every slide. This was one other moment I just wanted to highlight is it wasn't like a major milestone in my career or anything, but I had a chance, and this is kind of, it's about small risks and small chances, is I had a chance to lead a team, and it was a volunteer team, a cross-functional team. It wasn't anything, it was in addition to my day job, but it was a great opportunity, and I was, I think debating it at the time, and my biggest fear was I had to present, and that made me so nervous. And at the time, I think I kind of talked to a couple people, and they're like, oh yeah, I think it'd be good, you could do this team, and it's great for your career, and it'd get you some more visibility. But I was terrified, literally terrified. And this was the pre-Zoom days. It wasn't like you were actually walking up and giving a presentation. And I remember marching up there, and I would talk, and then I would literally rush off the stage. It was a two-minute spiel, but I was completely just so happy to have it done, just like I'll be tonight. But I had a small network, and they helped me through that. And I also learned, a lot about relationships, and I would say that's something I give people advice on all the time is, learning to build relationships and influence people, and that was something I learned too, is just taking that chance in that team. And I would have never thought, 20 years later, I'd still be talking about something that I did 2 years in my career, but it was really just something that helped me to grow and helped me to become the person I am today. And then a new role, so I'm in infrastructure today, as you might have heard, but I spent a lot of my career in cybersecurity. So a few years in, I'm looking at a new role, and someone had kind of talked to me about it, and I'm considering it, and it's an infrastructure. It was nothing that I was doing today, absolutely nothing. So I immediately look at the role, and in typical fashion, I looked at every skill that I didn't have. And it was just, that's the way I look at everything. And it's just, I think that's the way that I went through every process, was to talk myself out of taking these risks. But I have gotten better, so that was early on. So I had a good network of friends coworkers, friends, family at the time, and they really helped me to, kind of challenge me to take the role. And I did, and I realized all the stuff that I did in my first role really helped me in this role. It didn't matter the 5 skills that I didn't have, but it was just, you have to go through it. For me, not everybody has to go through it, but for me, I had to experience that change and realize that I could do it in order to feel okay about doing it again. And next, I'm gonna shift, I shouldn't have showed this, but I'm gonna shift a little bit about personal risk. So for me, this is a huge part of my story. So I'm always trying to balance, I have 2 kids. I have a 13-year-old daughter and a 10-year-old son. And every day of my life is like a juggling act, trying to balance it all. And so my first step, so I got myself comfortable the first few years of my career, but the second, kind of the 5 to 10 year period was really about the transition in my personal life and getting myself comfortable with, becoming a mom and going through those choices. So I think it was about 5 years in my current role. And I had been driving an hour each way, so 2 hours a day. I have a 2-year-old daughter. It was just exhausting, right? I survived it. I had been doing it a long time, but it was wearing on me, right? And it was just difficult to get through every day and to make it work. So there's a new role that opens up 5 minutes away, super easy decision, right? And it's it's part of Raytheon Technologies. And it was back in cyber, back in risk and compliance, which was something that I completely knew. And so totally easy decision. I had myself, I didn't have any skills that I was missing. I was completely fine with it. And then midway through the process, I applied, I interview, I feel really good about it, and I find out I'm pregnant. And that was and just that moment, I know people have switched jobs and, done it through pregnancy, and probably more gracefully than I've ever done. But it was a big moment because I had to be comfortable with taking that risk. I had to be comfortable with not knowing exactly how the next 6 months of my life, or a year at least, was gonna play out. But I did it, and I went back to, I still had the skill set. It didn't make me any less qualified for the job. And if anyone needs to hear that, is, it doesn't make you any less qualified, and it doesn't make you any less ready to be, going through anything with your family at the time. So it worked out, and I'm still here to talk about it today. And then I think I have like two more examples, so I'll try to get you out of here. I think I only have a few more minutes. So I'm in this role, I'm happy, I have a 5-minute commute, I'm thrilled. So I said, hey, life's not hard enough. So why shouldn't I consider it a new role? So yeah, exactly. So basically my dream role opens up. I mean, my dream role at the time, I would say I have different dreams now, but it was doing a lot of risk and strategy for the whole corporation. So I was really excited about it, and I was really passionate, and it was what I wanted to do. But I realized really quickly that I had to, that it was a commuting job again. So I was faced with, this choice between going back, doing a job that I really wanted to do, and commuting, or staying here and not taking that risk. So I gotta take one more drink, sorry. I think I made it like 3 slides, so I think it should be okay. So at the time, I think I had a coworker who said, hey, why don't you ask them if you can work remotely? And this was, I think it is much. I actually think COVID has really helped, especially our company, and just it made us all more human. But at the time, this was not normal, right? It was not normal to go and work remotely, and it wasn't, we weren't on a Zoom meeting. I was literally, when I was not in the office, or when you weren't in the office, you were a voice on a Polycom, right? You were sitting on the table, the slides sometimes got distributed to you ahead of time, but it was really challenging. So I go into the interview, and I went through the interview, and I felt pretty good about it. And then I asked her, the hiring manager at the time, and I said, hey, do you think it's a job, that I could do, from home? And shockingly, she thought about it for a few seconds. She's like, yeah, I think you could. And that's one thing that I learned, and I would say for everybody, is don't be afraid to ask for something. You could always ask, and she could have said no, and I could have said okay, and then I would have had a decision to make, but she didn't. And I have to say, she's still a friend and a mentor, and she was a great, great leader, and she still is, and I'm thankful for her mentorship there. But she really did help me to learn how to be a great leader too. That was one of the next things I learned as a part of that role. Was she showed me exactly what it was like and exactly who I wanted to exemplify. And being flexible and being supportive and, just being, and I used to say this, is that some people were accepting, right, of everything that you came with, and she was really committed. And there's a big difference between that. There's a big difference between being accepted and being committed, and, and being accepted and truly being committed. And she was committed to me working remotely and me maintaining that balance, and I'm thankful to this day for everything she did for me. And this is my last one, I promise. I think we got a few more minutes and everyone can get to their St. Patty's Day fun. So I just wanted to highlight this. This was, with each one of these, there was kind of a lesson that I learned, which is why I'm going through them, not so you can hear my entire career history, but it was just the easiest way for me to tell that story. Is I was asked to interview for a larger role. It was something I felt like I wasn't qualified for at the time, but I knew enough that I couldn't say no to it. I knew it was something that I had to do. And so I go through the interview, and again, I felt decent about it. But then and I was actually excited, and I didn't get the job. And I was devastated. Like, if I look back, I think it was 10, 12 years ago, I was really devastated that I didn't get the job. But that was, for me, that was also necessary for me to live through. I had to go through that. I had to realize that not getting a job was not personal. And trust me, I've not gotten plenty since, and it's much less catastrophic the more you go through it. And it's just, for me, like I said, I had to live all these things. That's the only way that I knew how to actually reduce, kind of my, or increase my ability to take these risks. And the rest of the story, I already covered this slide, so that's part of it. Is it's not that interesting. So what I did the first 10 years is get myself comfortable. And I was able, and then for the past 10, I've been a lot more comfortable with taking these risks. So it wasn't as, it's not as, like, I go through life and new skills, new teams, it's okay, right? You could switch, you can talk yourself into it. And for me, I just want everyone to know is that even if you're not comfortable, you could get comfortable. It takes time, but you can get comfortable. And I probably didn't, I had planned to talk about this a lot more, but I didn't, is a strong network, and I think everybody said that today. But it really is important. Anybody who, trust me, most of those people helped talk to me today and helped me feel better about this speech I was going to give tonight. But you find your family, your friends, your coworkers, find those people that encourage you, and find who you want to talk to in those situations, because when you need some words of encouragement, you want to find those people and have them and actually and be encouraged. And I have plenty of those people in my life, and I am thankful for them. And on a bad day, they're probably not happy to be friends with me, and on a good day, they're okay. And my last point, and I just have to mention her. I already mentioned my 2 kids. I have my son, who I love, and everyone who knows me would know that I definitely, they would know how much I love my son. But my daughter is really my inspiration. And a lot of this risk-taking, the lack of risk-taking, I see this in her every single day. I see it in her sports. I see it in her school. She is concerned about failing, and she doesn't want to take risks. And so I never want her to have that fear of failure and to not want to take risks, because she's wonderful. And I want her to see that example in me. And I want her to know that I'm comfortable, and even the times when I'm not, it's okay if she sees it, but I want her to see that example in me and live that every day, because it's going to get a lot easier if she starts that journey about 20 years earlier than I did. Or at least, a few years. She's 13 already, but I think she started a few years earlier than that. So anyway, all right, I think I might have been slightly over, but I'm okay. I still have a little extra time. So what do I want you to take from this? And I've covered a lot of these things. If you're early in career, give yourself time. Go into that first role. If it's confusing and you feel lost, that's normal. So it's okay. So if you met someone at the career fair and you're excited and you get that job, which I hope you do, but be okay with it taking some time and things don't make sense. Not everything makes sense immediately. But also find what you do well. You have, I guarantee, plenty of things that you do well, and you're going to find those things, and you can add value to whatever role you're in. Secondly, if you're interested in a change, if you work on a security awareness team and you want to work in the incident response team, don't immediately assess everything that's going to stop you from getting there. Think about what's going to get you there and be okay with it, and take the chance. Taking the chance is the only way you're going to find out. If you have something that you want to do, go do it. Don't wait for you to have all the skills. That's never going to happen. You just have to go for it. And for everybody else, find those people, because they're going to help you in every decision. They're going to help you when you're making a career decision. I trust me, my work friends still hear about all my personal decisions as well. So it's a very blended world, but find those people, because they're going to help you through. So, all right, I think we're on time. I hope everyone has a wonderful conference and enjoys the rest of their evening, and I look forward to getting to meet as many of you as I can throughout. So, thank you.
Welcome to the stage, Lynn Dome, Executive Director, WiCyS.
Cybersecurity, I am a voice, yet